Once upon a time, there was a guy named Gore, and he had a great life. A nice car, a daughter, he was earning money by committing petty robberies.
Oh yeah, what you got down here?
Woo! And working as a children's parties animator, wearing a bat costume. But since on his planet nobody cared about ecology and global warming, Gore somehow ended up in the middle of a desert with his daughter, without any food or water, because after praying to the gods for his entire life, and never receiving even a rotten egg from them, he decided that this time they would definitely help him.
I pray to you, not for me, but for my daughter.
But the daughter doesn't survive the extreme marathon across the desert and dies, and right after Gore held an improvised funeral, he gets a
surprise!
A real oasis instead of a desert mirage, and judging from the dead body of the Dark Shadow Lord, holder of the Necrosword, there must have been a huge battle here, which must have been heard by Gore, but in reality everything is nice and quiet in here, and the Dark Shadow Lord has been defeated by this clown, who didn't even hide the most dangerous weapon in the universe, and left it lying on the grass.
We just vanquished the holder of the Necrosword.
I cannot imagine how this guy managed to defeat the Dark Shadow Lord, who also had the Necrosword, because a bit later, two fucking Thors won't be able to defeat a simple human owning the sword, never mind the Dark Shadow Lord.
It's a Chinese copy.
And immediately the golden imbecile begins to insult a random stranger.
There's no eternal reward for you, dog!
Someone should teach that motherfucker a lesson.
But the beer belly didn't know that when you're killing a person right next to a dangerous artifact, it's better to keep your eyes open, and the Necrosword, apparently driven by built-in artificial intelligence, raises and fits in Gore's hand like a morning correction, and the next second, the beer belly gets a foreign object shoved into his head.
Oh my!
And immediately the magical sword shows Gore a CGI cartoon, according to which he is supposed to use the Asgardian Bifrost technology to hack the universe firewall and find Eternity, the Wishmaker.
Eternity is a very powerful being at the center of the universe that will grant the desire of the first person who reaches it.
Where Gore will wish death on everyone who has God written as the last name in their passport.
End of story.
And since a god weapon gives superpowers to any mortal human, but at the same time kills them over a few days, Gore, instead of going to Nidavellir and nicely ask giant Tyrion Lannister to forge something that,
in theory, it could even summon the Bifrost.
or go to Earth to New Asgard, and by terrorizing the locals a little bit, make Thor with his Stormbreaker find him, decided to make a god's genocide all around the universe by himself, knowing that any moment the Necrosword would extract the last bits of life from him, and he wouldn't have time to get to Eternity.
Not a great plan.
So the plan is that Thor would notice god murders and find Gore by himself. But Gore didn't take into account the fact that Thor might be sitting somewhere being absolutely drunk and wouldn't care about some guy killing other gods.
So you guys want a drink?
I don't drink tea. Well, what do you drink? Not tea.
Beer, tequila, all sorts of things.
Right!
And as soon as the story moves on to Thor himself, the logic of this movie says,
Fuck all of y'all, okay?
Thor's combat friend Korg is completely useless, and while the Guardians of the Galaxy are fighting the monsters, he's sitting in a cozy cave and tells stories about Thor, whose mother, who seemed to be sane in the previous movies, turned out to be mentally sick, and have been taking the only son and the heir of the crown to the battles with herself, and using him instead of chest armor. And in this movie, young Thor's mother doesn't look like herself. If the characters in this scene are made on the computer, I don't understand why wouldn't the designers make them have at least some recognizable features of Thor and his mother Frigga. But the movie director, Taika Waititi, didn't think of such minor details, because he had more important things on his mind.
Meaning, pretend I'm dumb.
I'm talking about a threesome makeout session during the filming, with Rita Ora and Tessa Thompson, who plays Valkyrie.
Oh, she's in a lot of pain, but she is stable.
Are you done?
And if in the previous Thor movie, Taika was only practicing turning Thor into an imbecile clown, in this movie, he did this fully when the beer belly Thor turned back into the sex symbol Thor.
Woo! Hubba hubba!
He burnt not only calories, but also the rest of his brain. He took up meditation, flies on the Stormbreaker like on a broom, gives meaningless speeches while standing in the line of enemy fire, after which he single-handedly destroys the squad of angry owls, shows us that he's a big fan of Van Damme, and when the locals ask him to clear the main temple as carefully as possible, the Asgard asshat demolishes it, not even for fun, but just for no reason.
What a classic Thor adventure! Hurrah!
No more drugs for that man.
And apparently, Thor's favorite entertainment, which is called
Cocainum,
is used not only by him. Jane, sitting in the hospital, notices her fan reading her book, and instead of minding her own business, she starts to show off.
I wrote it. Good book.
No, fuck off.
But the guy doesn't understand what he's reading, so Jane explains everything to him based on the Event Horizon movie.
you just ruined your own book.
So what, you will buy a new one. Apparently, this is the vision of Taika Waititi. Let the main character do something cool, but extremely stupid, because asking for a piece of paper from a nurse instead of damaging the guy's book would be too smart.
Interstellar?
No.
That movie explains everything really clearly.
A scientist recommends watching a sci-fi movie for studying astrophysics. Well, if you want to become a doctor, you should play the Surgeon Simulator.
For a scientist, you seem incredibly stupid.
And Jane is in the hospital not because she's got a peanut allergy, but because she has the 4th stage of cancer. And when her friend tries to convince her to not give up and continue the treatment, Jane is as stubborn as a mule.
I'll fight it my way.
Of course, the knowledge of astrophysics is same as medicine and cancer cells. And even when she asks the exhibitionist and astrophysics Professor Selvig for help, for some reason the solution doesn't magically appear.
The results are still coming back the same.
And then, after reading in the book that Mjolnir grants great health to its holder, Jane goes to New Asgard to have a look at its charts and maybe get a dose of healing radiation, when she could have asked Bruce Banner for help, who knows about medicine more than Johnny Sins does. He even made a machine that can heal wounds, and maybe he could help Jane. Well, he even could drop some of his blood on her, and the gamma radiation would heal her. Or they could try some other way of injecting Bruce's biological fluid into Jane.
Oh, you mean sex?
I know, it's crazy.
And as soon as Jane comes close to the hammer, it activates an interesting feature. Because when she was together with Thor, he enchanted the hammer for Jane's protection.
I need you to promise me you'll always protect her.
And the hammer, sensing Jane's illness, gives her Thor's powers, healing her from cancer, but at the same time extracts life out of her.
That hammer is killing you. It's draining all of your mortal strength, leaving your body unable to fight the cancer.
And Jane is gonna die in any case, either from cancer or from using the hammer's power. Then what was the point of enchanting the hammer at all, if the spell is so useless? I guess Thor, after getting the hammer from his father, didn't bother to read the instructions for its use, especially the part that explains how not to make enchantments. And for saving the locals from the angry owls, Thor gets 2 screaming goats as a gift. And if the serious version of Thor from 2012 would have politely refused from such a dumb gift, the imbecile version of Thor from 2022 is of course happy.
Giant goats!
Oh, look at those! They are wonderful. Oh, look at that!
No more drugs for that man.
And as soon as they receive a distress signal from Sif that someone is killing the gods more effectively than John Wick kills mercenaries, the Guardians use some lame excuse to bail, just to let Thor have his movie all for himself.
I don't know, maybe we should split up. So many people to save, I mean...
You're goddamn right.
Well, of course, we have some unknown God Butcher, so I guess the smartest move would be to split up. What if it's a new version of Thanos, and alone they would turn into a live spaghetti? And if at one moment Thor behaves like a serious man,
My friend is in danger, we must go at once.
the next moment he acts like an imbecile again, so that he would take as much time as he can to say goodbye to Quill, in the dumbest way, when every second counts and might result in death of his friend.
You're an imbecile.
And by the way, I've got a question to Quill.
Where is Gamora?
They seemed to have something between them during the endgame, and she even made him a massage. Why did he just let her leave? And because Thor was messing around for too long, he didn't come in time to help his friend Sif, who has lost her ability to pull up her pants from both sides at the same time.
You're missing an arm.
But most importantly, Gore intentionally left her alive, so that she would tell Thor that
Asgard is next.
so that Gore would ambush Thor there. But why didn't he ambush Thor right here on the spot will remain a mystery. And apparently Gore has agreed on the timing of his new Asgard attack with the scriptwriters, who promised him that Thor would show up immediately after the attack. Because if Thor had spent a few more minutes on saying goodbye to Quill or on talking to Sif, the shadow monsters would have left only leftovers of the local population. And instead of killing the monsters as fast as possible, Thor and Valkyrie decide to have a little chat. And nobody even thinks about evacuating the children, who are staring through the windows with such joy as if they saw the Rammstein concert outside. And right after that, Jane shows up with a hammer, which now has a shotgun mode, and saves the situation. And Thor, who had spent the entire 3rd movie saving Asgardians, after seeing his ex-hammer and ex-girlfriend, stops giving a shit about his people, because it's much more important to have a talk with Jane than killing the monsters that are eating Asgardians right next to them.
When in doubt, follow your dick.
And they would have talked for a few more hours if it wasn't for Gore interfering in the fight. And he had a chance to kill Thor and take his Stormbreaker twice, but both times he was lingering and wasting time. If you're not able to kill gods, why are you even trying?
Shit, I can't swim. I know I can't. So you know what I do? I stay my black ass out the pool.
And when Gore got his ass kicked a little bit, he escapes and kidnaps the children to use them as a bait for Thor. When Thor is right next to him, he can just make a few dozen more shadow monsters, overwhelm Thor and his friends, take the Stormbreaker, and go to eternity, while the Necrosword hasn't killed him yet. But the ex-Batman wants to make things more complicated. And not only did no one organize evacuation of the children, but also most of the kids are sleeping peacefully, and apparently didn't hear a huge fight going on right under their windows. And what were their parents thinking about? But well, what else can we expect when New Asgard is run by the drunkards?
I don't plan to stop drinking.
Oh.
and Gore loads up the children into a space minivan and escapes in Loki style. And when Thor managed to spend 5 minutes without being an imbecile, now he shows us his infantilism.
Quite a reunion, huh?
You're telling me.
What's it been, like 3, 4 years?
8 years, 7 months, and 6 days.
Yeah, of course, the mortal human doesn't care at all, but the god who is 1500 years old, who's had hundreds of girlfriends all around the universe, has been counting days since his recent breakup.
You are no god.
Look at you. You're a little bitch.
Then, when the parents have gathered in the main building to ask Valkyrie why her town defense was so shitty that the kids were taken right in front of her eyes, imbecile Thor opens Bifrost right from there to search for the children and breaks the roof for no reason, because only a normal person would go outside before doing this.
No more drugs for that man.
The other imbecile is the producer Taika Waititi, who made the Stormbreaker sentient, and now is offended that Thor still likes his old hammer, and because of that Stormbreaker refuses to transport Thor over Bifrost, and the god has to persuade the bloody piece of metal when every second counts. This is not just insane, this is
beyond fucked up.
And the Asgard idiots would have continued sitting on Earth not knowing Gore's location, if it wasn't for the Heimdall's son among the children, who suddenly discovers his father's ability, calls Thor, and transports his projection into the space minivan, so that Thor would find out where exactly they are.
They're in the Shadow Realm.
And since this is Gore's territory, where they cannot simply kick his ass, the team of ex-drunkards and cancer patients make a plan to organize a squad of gods who would agree to risk their lives just for 20 human children.
Not a great plan.
We could recruit Ra, Hercules.
Well, of course, calling the Guardians or Banner or Doctor Strange would be too simple for these idiots. So Thor, instead of involving his useful friends, decides to test his luck and convince the gods who he doesn't even know, spending precious time on that. I don't think Gore would provide the children with 3 meals a day.
Finally, some good fucking food.
So the plan is ready, and the remaining thing to do is to convince the Stormbreaker to stop being a
little bitch
and open the Bifrost to Olympus. But the piece of metal is still offended, and then the girl who likes to damage other people's books and sees the new weapon for the first time immediately comes up with a solution how to use it for powering the boat drawn by goats, which somehow will make Stormbreaker open Bifrost without any objections. Where is the logic?
It's not there!
And while one imbecile is grumbling at the hammer, as if it was his best friend who borrowed money and disappeared.
You moved on quick, didn't you? You're some piece of work.
The other one gets angry that the hammer isn't healing her and destroys someone else's property. I can't wait to see the residents of this house to come back who just lost their child and got their house destroyed. One idiot is breaking roofs, another one is breaking sinks, never mind the drunkard who took really useful things to a dangerous expedition.
A hand grenade?
No, it's a portable speaker.
You dumb
I guess it's more important to listen to music on their way, instead of developing a plan to save the children. Thor again gives a meaningless speech, and after that, the team of idiots, riding a boat drawn by 2 goats, using an offended Stormbreaker, go to Olympus to see Zeus, who cares only about one very important thing.
Where are we going to hold this year's orgy?
What? And in the city of gods, there is no air defense, no border patrol, no customs department. Anyone can show up and do whatever they want. No police either, only deranged locals, just how Taika Waititi likes. And then, everything is just as I expected. One of the wisest and most famous gods, Zeus, in the Marvel universe, is turned into a moron who gets tired of Thor's chattering and calls him up to the main stage, and he gives the floor to a stranger who has just interrupted his speech and blows away his clothes, so that everyone would see that Hemsworth doesn't skip his daily dose of steroids. And after that, he comes down personally, in the most manly way according to Disney. So Zeus doesn't give a shit about Thor's requests to give him an army, or at least his thunderbolt, because he knows that Gore has a necrosword.
Which means he could kill us. Not good.
And according to the dumb logic of Zeus, only gods know about this city, and Gore wouldn't be able to find them.
This is a secret place, known only to the gods.
Apparently Zeus thinks that Gore wouldn't be able to extract the city location from one of the gods through the interrogation.
I shot him in the dick!
And Goldilocks on steroids realizes that Zeus has even less brains than him, and it's better to solve problems in his usual way.
Russian fun!
And the security is definitely up to Zeus's standards. They can only serve as a material for golden eyeshadows, and apparently the main Zeus's shelter can be conquered by only 2 Thors, a drunkard and a pile of rocks, because the security consists of CGI dummies, when they should have hired Jason Statham or Dwayne "The Granite" Johnson.
It's pretty good.
Not bad.
And when the main characters covered the entire stage with yellow liquid, Zeus kills only the character about which we won't feel sorry. And more than that, he actually survives, because for some reason the only vital organ is his face.
Turns out the only part of a Cronin that's alive is his mouth.
How's that even possible?
And Zeus, knowing how dangerous the enemies are, still throws his thunderbolt into the young god with a quick reaction, and thanks to Thor, that with his precise throw, he rids the world from this kind of Zeus. Then the Asgardians finish the CGI dummies and call the gods taxi, and after that, Thor has a video call with Heimdall's son just to tell the kids how he killed Zeus.
I can't believe you killed Zeus.
Well, you know what they say, never meet your heroes.
He didn't even think that Gore would intercept their communication channel and hide the children somewhere else. I guess finding logic in this movie is
impossible.
Because of that, everyone in the boat is having fun. There is even a bar on board. And when they're going to fight against a supervillain, Valkyrie gets drunk and enjoys karaoke with Korg.
What the fuck is going on?
And Thor again has developed schizophrenia, and he again talks to Stormbreaker. Well, we used to have this kind of Thor.
Thank you for coming here.
And this.
Look around you! You think this madness will end with your rule?
And now...
Delicious. Sorry we've been fighting lately.
But in this movie, we have a drama as well. Jane notices that Thor is being sad, so she cheers him up.
I have cancer.
Yes!
The idiots team arrive to the kingdom of black and white TVs, and seeing the empty cage, they have the same thought.
And we just got fucked!
Which obviously means that...
It's a trap!
Because of that, when Jane splits from the group, Thor doesn't care at all, and in the nearest room, Jane finds a lame plot twist. Gore, knowing that they would come here, left detailed instructions for opening the passage to eternity, showing the reason why he needs the Asgardians.
You tell me why you just threw Stormbreaker out the window.
He needs it to open the gates of eternity.
And when Gore catches everyone in a second, he decides to waste his time on making Thor call his weapon back. If he had simply put all the papers in a drawer, Jane wouldn't have thrown the axe away, and Gore would have had it by this moment. And when 5 years ago, Thor learned how to cast lightning strikes without any hammers or axes, it was absolutely necessary for him to wait until he sees Jane's protruding eyes while she was strangled by Gore, and only after Thor had a look what a girl with a constipation looks like, he overloads the local electrical network.
I think we woke the neighbors.
Gore summons monsters that keep the ladies busy and has a fencing round with Thor, but this time he swings just a few centimeters short from relieving Chris Hemsworth from a high-paying movie role. But what's the point of fighting with a god when he can jump out of any tiny shadow and quickly cut Thor's legs off? And this is what happens when you take to a fight not the Guardians of the Galaxy, but your ex-girlfriend, who has 2 days of experience of operating the hammer, and a drunkard. The first one cannot take even 1 hit from a shadow monster, and the other one loses her coordination after all the drinks she had. So Gore sneaks up from behind and plants the 6 inches of Zeus's tool into Valkyrie, so that she cannot even stand.
6 inches is not a lot.
But Gore, of course, doesn't make the control shot into Valkyrie's head, and instead has an electrotherapy session with Thor. But after a few moments he escapes into a shadow, and Thor, calling Bifrost, was not keeping his eyes open and forgot that both Christian Bale can jump out of any shadow, and apparently Thor's steroid muscles are useless. In the game Tug of Stormbreaker, Thor loses to a skinny guy whose life is being extracted by the Necrosword.
Big fella like you, who'd have thought you'd be a mediocre?
After coming back to New Asgard, Jane goes to the oncology center, which magically appeared in the village. And after a dramatic shit show that is better to die in a battle than in a hospital, Thor still sends her off, because he has Valkyrie who would cover him, right?
I wish I could join you, but I'd probably die, so you'll have to go alone.
Never had a friend quite like you.
So Thor gets the last instructions.
All you have to do is destroy that sword. It's his source of power. He won't survive long without it.
And takes only Thunderbolt, leaving Mjolnir with Jane, even though having an extra weapon wouldn't hurt. And while Gore is hacking the firewall of eternity and spawns the shadow monsters, Thor, whose motivation was to save the children from Gore, allows them to fight with him only after charging them from his battery.
Lead your army to that axe.
We shall do our worst. For Asgard.
And the children, motivated with the possibility of imminent death, kill the shadow monsters as effectively as Thor does, who didn't even think what he would say to the parents in case if he brings a cart full of dead bodies back.
Is your idiot brain getting f***ed by stupid?
Yes!
But the kids are lucky that Marvel Universe has gone weak, and any kind of enemy from now on is as dangerous as a mosquito. And Thor again loses to Gore, who slaps him with his little hands instead of using the Necrosword. And when he finally decided to use the sword, Jane spoils his plan. And then we have a fair fight, 2 against 1, and those who bet their money on Gore are about to lose it. And while Thor is getting himself hernia, trying to pull out the Stormbreaker, Jane, who has been operating the hammer for a few days, alone beats the God Butcher, who wasn't defeated by Thor himself.
How's that even possible?
And as soon as the Stormbreaker hacks the firewall, Thor manages to pull it out and gives it to Heimdall's son so that he would bring the kids home. But why do that if the danger has passed and they have just defeated a swarm of monsters? He gave away the Stormbreaker when he could have used it to chop the Cubal's head off. And when this is supposed to be a Thor's movie, in the last moment, Jane steals the victory and breaks the sword with a hammer.
Is this some feminist thing?
She's not a feminist.
And while Thor was fucking around and staring sympathetically at his ex-girlfriend, he missed the moment when Gore came back to consciousness and reached eternity. First, finish your job and snap the neck of the bad guy, and then sympathize with Jane as much as you want.
Fair point.
Then Thor gives a speech about love.
It's not death or revenge that you seek. You seek love.
And Gore immediately switches from rage to family values and wants to wish the resurrection of his daughter, but doesn't know who will take care of her when he dies.
She would be alone.
But smart Jane, who is about to die, puts responsibility for someone else's child on Thor.
She won't be alone.
Jane dies and goes to Valhalla, and I guess producers will bring her back for sequels.
You see, the guys in charge of this stuff lack creativity and are completely out of ideas. So all they do now is recycle shit from the past and expect us all not to notice.
And Gore, after resurrecting his daughter, goes to heaven for good actors.
He's a good guy.
Thor adopts a grown-up girl instead of sending her to an orphanage, because an imbecile drunkard, of course, can change in one moment and suddenly become a loving father. And what will the social services say about a grown-up man that brings someone else's child around the universe with himself, gives her weapons, and involves her into committing murders?
Fair point.
The only good thing about this movie is Christian Bale's actor play, and the rest of the plot is...
Shit beginning, shit middle, and a shit end. Get out, get out, get out.